Hi, and welcome to Sweet, Sassy, and Sugar-Free. I'm your host, Maya. My love of baking started in my hometown of Shamokin, Pennsylvania. Both of my grandmothers were tremendous bakers, Rosaline and Anna. I can still smell the carrot cake and the cutout cookies baking in their kitchens when I think of holidays back home. Fast forward to 2019 when my sister and I dove into a ketogenic diet, all because I was diagnosed with 1.5 diabetes. We started making cookies, cakes, candies, and things that tasted like real desserts. A whole goal of our bakery is to make everyone feel normal when they walk into a coffee shop or a bakery. Thanks to my sister Leah, my amazing husband Chad, and my brother-in-law Jeff, we came up with Marie Lane Bakery. So join me in making something sweet, sassy, and a little sugar-free. Before we get started with all of our baking today, I'd like to thank some of our sponsors that made being in this kitchen spot possible. We have 4 sponsors over here. The Conversation is a podcast by Whitney and Susan. They're best friends and rock stars at life. Find them on Spotify or wherever you like to watch your favorite or listen to your favorite podcast, The Conversation by Susan and Whitney. Our next sponsor is Little Bear Designs. They've provided the sign behind us for Marie Lane Bakery. Check out Little Bear Designs on Facebook and Instagram, and they can help you create all your new adventures. Miller's Mushrooms, straight out of Georgia. Brian and Regina are fantastic mushroom growers and full of education and mushroom knowledge. Check them out on Facebook and Instagram. And lastly, Echo Springs Farm. Echo Springs is a family-run farm that focuses on agriculture education, produce, eggs, and fresh meats. Find them on Facebook and Instagram. Today we're going to be making Crumble Pie Bars. You might ask why, but that's because everyone, customers, family, and friends have asked me over the years when baking sugar-free that they really miss pie. That texture, those flavors, especially at Thanksgiving and Christmas time. So here we are. Let's try to do a low-carb pie. We'll do a ratio that's a little bit different. So not a huge amount of carbs, but definitely some. We're going to focus on the fruit that we use. So our blueberries, our blackberries, and our strawberries. They're higher in fiber, so this cuts the carb amount. You're also going to see that we're going to do more of a crust, that buttery shortbread crust that we're used to. We'll have more of a crust and a little less sauce so that our carb count is just a little bit less. I'd also like to let you know that Eli, our oldest son, the 15-year-old, he's one of my biggest taste testers, and this recipe is Eli approved. So join me over at the stove where we'll cook up some sauce. Hi there, welcome back. It's time to make our sauce. So there's 3 parts to our Crumble Pie Bars. A fresh produce sauce, our crust, and those crumbly tops that we're all used to, and then a whipped topping, and we'll plate it up and have a little bit of garnish just to make it a little sassier. So the first thing we want to do is take our fresh produce. You can definitely use a bag of frozen berries if need be. In a pinch, it works just fine. You'll need about 2 heaping cups of each berry. I like to use blackberries, strawberries, and blueberries. So they should all go into your pan, which has a little bit of water coating the bottom. We want these cooking and simmering over a medium heat so that they cook down and they're all blended together. To amplify the flavor, we are going to add a little bit of lemon juice. And we of course need to add our sweetener. Now there are multitudes of sweeteners to use these days when it comes to low carb baking. I like to use Lakanto and Swerve. The confectioner's blend of Swerve works best. It melts really nice when you're trying to do sauces. There is a sweetener that works a little bit better, and that's actually xylitol. Xylitol is wonderful when you're making jams and jellies, but it's dangerous for dogs. So as everything's put together into our pan, we're gonna simmer up these fruits, mix them all together so there's a good blend, and we're gonna use our mixture of monk fruit and erythritol as a sweetener. Keep in mind you'll need to use a pretty large pan here. And trust me, I know everyone talks about sweeteners and how yucky and gross they are, and there are definitely some of them out there that I don't prefer. but sweeteners have come a long way, and I do miss the sweets being a diabetic. Trust me, I want to stick my face in a vat of icing. I am that girl. Nothing is ever too sweet. But this is a great substitute, and you won't feel like you're missing the carbs at all. So it looks a little messy. That's all right. We need that water to come up, and we need all this to simmer and melt down. We're gonna add just a pinch of salt. I like to use Steel City Salt Company. They're absolutely fantastic, out of Western Pennsylvania. And then I talked about using the lemon. We need that to amplify the flavor and balance it out. You can add as little or as much as you'd like. I do about a tablespoon or so, and we'll blend it all together and just let that cook. We do need to add xanthan gum in at the end, and we will, just to thicken and congeal our sauce. But right now, this needs to simmer and melt down completely and blend all those flavors for about 15 minutes. So we'll be right back. Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Sweet, Sassy, and Sugar-Free. We're on to our next part of our recipe for our crumble pie bars. This part is that sweet, buttery crust that everybody loves. The shortbread, thick, crunchy stuff at the bottom of those bars. This is also used for those crumbly crumbs that come at top that are sweet, a little sugary, and a little crunchy, and yet still a little soft. They're kind of magical. So the first thing you'll need are all of your ingredients. We'll need 3 cups of almond flour. Let's talk about almond flour for just a little bit. I'm super picky when it comes to the grain of the almond flour. I need a super fine grain, not to be coarse, and it needs to be blanched. If you find an almond meal, that means that they've ground it up with the skins on the almonds, and that's not what we want. It's great for breading pork chops or for chicken, but not in your baked goods. So you'll need a super fine blanched grade of coarse grain. I like to use Blue Diamond. That's my favorite. The next thing we'll need is about 1.5 cups of unsweetened shredded coconut. We need 1.5 cups of golden monk fruit. We need 4 tablespoons of coconut flour, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of vanilla. And at the very end, we're going to toss in our melted butter to make those crumbs as we press them into our pan. So everything can get just dumped into a bowl. This is super convenient, super easy if you're on the run, all together at one time, except hold off on that butter. In goes your golden monk fruit. Again, I like to use Lakanto. And golden monk fruit, the granular is better than using the confectioner's blend. Throw in our coconut flour, our little bit of salt, and vanilla. All of this gets mixed together in our bowl. You can see kind of big lumps forming already, and you'll definitely notice that once we pour in the melted butter over it. So you might ask if there are other sweeteners that we can use. Can we use regular sugar? Obviously not for low carb. What about coconut sugar? What about honey? So these all have nutrient value. They're great sweeteners, but they don't work for diabetic friendly. The amount of nutrients does not balance the amount of carbohydrates in it, and you will have a spike in your glycemic index. So just because it's healthy and nutritious, it doesn't mean it's always synonymous with diabetic friendly or keto friendly. So we're mixing that butter in, creating our stickiness to our batter. At this point, this is where you can embrace your inner child. You can grab the dough and start squishing it between your hands. We're gonna grab our 9x13 pan behind us. I like to use silicone when it comes to keto baking. Nothing sticks and it all stays together. So we'll grab our pan, we're gonna grease it up, and we're gonna press our dough into it and make our crust. Next up, we're gonna take this batter and toss about 3/4 of it into our prepped pan. Remember that an extra little grease on the bottom of this pan will help things not stick. It's a little tricky when it comes to keto baking. Almond flour cooks up a little bit faster. And if we have coconut flour in there, it means it absorbs our moisture. Remember to keep enough crumbs out for our topping. We're gonna spread this through the pan, and then we're gonna get in there with our hands, so take off those rings, and we're gonna squish it down into the pan. So we're gonna leave about that much, and we'll squish them and make them crumbs soon. Right now, always prep work. We're gonna press this dough down into our pan. Make sure your edges are coming down and off of the pan. We want everything to stick together. You'll start seeing a little bit of cracks form. That's okay, the butter will melt through and will definitely solidify. We're gonna preheat our oven to 350 degrees, and we're keeping our sauce simmering in the back. Once we get this into the oven, we're gonna add our xanthan gum to use it for thickening in our sauce. We need it to congeal up a little bit. Remember, xanthan gum is gluten-free. We use it in moderation though. It is a thickener just like cornstarch works. So we don't want to use a whole lot of it. You'll need about a tablespoon to 2 to make that sauce all thick. All right, we are ready to put our dough into the oven. Here's our crust. We're gonna place it into the oven, and we need it to stay in there about 15 to 20 minutes, just until those edges are golden brown. Now let's throw our xanthan gum inside our amazing sauce. We need about a tablespoon to 2, and you wanna just gently sprinkle it over the top of our sauce while it simmers. We're gonna mix it all in, and xanthan gum does get a little clumpy, so you need to start mixing it to melt it into the sauce. Once it simmers for another maybe 3 to 4 minutes, we'll be able to take it off and cool off to the side before we need to layer it onto our crumble pie bars. And we'll be right back. Welcome back to Sweet, Sassy, and Sugar-Free. We're on our third step of our crumble pie bars. We're gonna make our topping. So we've got crust in the oven and sauce cooling on the stove. And now for the garnish. We need 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. We need 3 cups of confectioner sugar, which is an entire bag of the 12-ounce swerve. We need a little bit of vanilla, and if you'd like, you can toss in a little bit of salt too. All of your ingredients go into the mixer, and we whip, whip, and whip until you see those classic peaks that we all love about whipped cream. So in goes our heavy whipping cream. 2 whole cups, and then an entire bag of the swerve, about 3 cups. And this is the confectioner's blend, just like you would if you were going to make whipped cream with real sugar. I'm gonna toss in a little bit of our vanilla. And we'll lift our bowl and whisk. We need to whisk this for a good couple of minutes before we see those peaks. While we're mixing up our whipped topping, I'm just gonna slide this over, and we're gonna talk about our sponsors, those who have made it possible for us to be here today. I have the sponsors over here, and The Conversation is a podcast that I like to listen to while I'm baking in the kitchen. Sometimes I have 15 to 20 minutes in between batches. And The Conversation is a podcast that you can find on Spotify by Susan and Whitney. They're best friends, and they are rock stars at life. They talk about their likes, their dislikes, their favorite reads, and their not so favorite reads. So check them out on Spotify, The Conversation by Susan and Whitney. Our next sponsor is Little Bear Designs. Little Bear has made the signs that I get behind me from Marie Lane Bakery. Little Bear makes custom designs for signs and for baby clothes. Check them out on Instagram and Facebook. They'll help you create your next adventure. Our third sponsor today is Miller's Mushrooms. Miller's is out of Georgia, and they serve everyone locally, and they ship around the United States. They make tinctures, especially the one out of Lion's Mane, and they pulverize their mushrooms so you can use them in your bakery ingredients. I love to use them in my sauces, and sometimes my nut bars and granola bars for added benefit and nutrients. And my last sponsor today is Echo Springs Farm. Echo Springs Farm has provided all of us with much of the ingredients you see in front of you today. They provide produce, eggs, and fresh meats. They're an amazing family-run farm. They teach agricultural education, they do farm tours, and they're just all-around awesome people. Check them out on Instagram and Facebook, Echo Springs Farm. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sweet, Sassy, and Sugar-Free. Our crust has come out of the oven. Our peaks are all whipped from our whipped cream, and our sauce is all cooled and ready. We're gonna pour our sauce over our crust very gently and carefully. We want to distribute this over the entire bottom. You may have a little bit more than what you need. That's all right. You can pour some over the finished product when we do our garnish. Spread it out as far to the edges as you can get. Doesn't have to go all the way, but depending on how watery your berries were, you might find that it spreads itself. If you don't like the consistency of your sauce, you can definitely add more xanthan gum, and that will thicken it for sure. At this point is where we get to be kids. Embrace your inner child. We're gonna take off those rings again, and we're gonna make those crumbs. So we're gonna dig in and squeeze, and we're gonna distribute them all across our bars. You want some big, you want some teeny tiny. They don't have to be uniform. It can be kind of crazy in here. That's all right. It's all about those classic signature crumbs that everybody's used to and looks like all those other pie bars that all those sugar full baked goods have. Once we take these and distribute them all over our crust and our sauce, they're gonna go right back into the oven at 350 degrees for another 15 to 20 minutes until you see those crumbs get golden brown. The last touch we're gonna put on right before they go in the oven is some extra golden monk fruit, just to caramelize that sugar a little bit. I mean, not sugar. Let's take our golden monk fruit, drizzle across the top, spread it all over, and we're ready. Back into the oven it goes. We'll be back in a minute. Alrighty, we're gonna put our Crumble Pie Bars into the oven, 350 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes. Pop them in until they're golden brown on the top. While our Crumble Pie Bars are baking up in the oven, I thought I'd take a minute to let everyone know about our sponsors who made it possible for us to be in this kitchen today. We have 4 sponsors, and our first one is The Conversation. It's a podcast by my dear friends Susan and Whitney. Not only are they great friends, but they're rock stars at life. They love to share their life experiences, their interests, and their favorite and not so favorite reads. So join them in the conversation on Spotify or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Our next sponsor is Little Bear Designs. They provided the Marie Lane Bakery sign behind me. They can help you with all of your sign design needs, your baby clothes or t-shirts. They'll help you create your next adventure. Check them out on Facebook and Instagram, Little Bear Designs. Miller's Mushrooms. I can use all of their pulverized mushrooms and their added benefits into all my baked goods. My last and final sponsor is Echo Springs Farm. They are a family-owned farm out of Imler, Pennsylvania. They provide eggs, produce, and fresh meats. They're an absolutely wonderful family, and they focus on agriculture education and even farm tours. Check them out on Facebook and Instagram, Echo Springs Farm. Our Crumble Pie Bars are ready. They're coming out of the oven. Nice and brown crumbs on the top. Now, I do like to serve these up cooled after they sit in the refrigerator for a while, but you can absolutely scoop it out just like you would a cobbler and add in whipped topping. Feel free to add in your favorite ice cream, anything that you like. Remember, friends, my low carb friends, that whipped cream is your friend. It only has 1 carb in it. And remember that almond flour is also your friend. It has 6 to 8 grams of protein every quarter cup that you use in a recipe. So they're all ready to go. Let's cool them down. We're ready to cut and plate up our Crumble Pie Bars. Remember, these are mixed berry, and you can use whatever you'd like, even peaches or apples. Just remember they'll be a little bit higher in carb. The mixed berry has definitely got some fiber in it, and so that cuts your carbs. Now remember, I said earlier that we could serve these up chilled. So these are pre-made and we're chilled in our fridge, and we cut them up just so they're in nice squares. You can also just scoop them like a warm cobbler. So dig deep in the bottom there and pull them up, still staying in sort of a bar form. We plop them in the bowl. And what we want to do is add in some homemade whipped cream that we made earlier. And there can never be enough whipped cream. And lastly, a little bit of garnish. We've got blueberries, fresh strawberries, and blackberries, and a little bit of mint leaves just to doll it up a bit. Make it, dare I say, a little sassier. Add them to both. And you are officially a foodie and Instagram ready. Voila. Maybe I'll have to try it. Fresh and warm out of the oven. Absolutely delicious. Welcome back to Sweet, Sassy, and Sugar-Free. What bakery would be complete without a classic chocolate chip cookie? So here's the recipe, quick and dirty, folks. We need 1 stick of butter and 1.5 cups of our confectioner sweetener. We want to melt them together in a bowl and whisk them until they are this light yellow color. I'm going to instantly throw this into our mixer. Our view's a little hard to see here, but we want to toss it all in, and then it's all of your wet ingredients that go in next. Chocolate chip cookies remind me of my professor when I was at Penn State, and his name is Dr. Mark Brennan, and he taught us about community, and he would tell us all the time about how our forefathers would talk about and debate the tenets of our country, and then eventually would go home at night and come together and break bread. And that to me is what a chocolate chip cookie does. So come and break bread or a chocolate chip cookie with me. The next thing that goes in, wet ingredients. 1 room temperature egg and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. I'm gonna lift that bowl and we're gonna mix. Just for a few seconds before you need to add in some of your dry ingredients. You'll need 1/2 teaspoon of xanthan gum and 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. All mixing together, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And now for your almond flour. We need about 2.5 cups. And just gently glide that in till it's all blended and mixed. Make sure you preheat your oven to 350 degrees. These cookies will make probably about 20 cookies, but it takes about 20 to 22 minutes to bake them up according to the temperature of your oven. Dump the rest of that in. It's okay to mix. You'll get a soft kind of consistency. I would take them off of the mixer before you add in the chocolate chips. Take that down a little bit and show you the dough. Tap off our whisk, and our batter is ready to roll. If I could get it off of the mixer. There's our batter. It's got a soft consistency that we can scoop out with a cookie scoop. We're gonna toss in about 1 cup of chocolate chips. Make sure that you melt that butter prior to mixing in your batter. If you don't, you will get crystal chunks of butter and sweetener, and it's absolutely horrible. Will not work at all. You'll have hard, crunchy balls of butter and sugar in your cookies. So this is the perfect way. Make sure that's melted down until it gets to that light pale yellow color. If you'd like to, you can add 1/2 cup, a full cup of nuts, whatever you choose. These are pecans, so these are chocolate chip pecan today. Once we get these all mixed up, we'll use our cookie scoop and do each individual cookie separated on a silicone pan. They're my favorite, nothing sticks. So it gets the job done. We'll be right back after we scoop our cookies. At this point, we're ready to scoop out our delicious cookies. So we want to take 1 full cookie scoop. It can be pretty heaping. I usually pack it down a little bit on the top and just release our cookies onto the tray. It's okay if things are overflowing. Who doesn't want an ooey gooey overflowing chocolate chip cookie? Again, you want these about 1.5 inches apart on your tray. They will rise up a little bit, but not too much. Remember, we're not using traditional ingredients here. So after we're done and we get everything on here, Again, we're gonna put them into the oven at 350 degrees. Remember, you can use whatever you'd like in here. You can use white chips, Lily's, and Chalk Zero and Bake Believe are the 3 brands that I like to use when it comes to chocolate chips. They have white chips, they have unicorn chips, all different flavors, mint and cinnamon when it comes to the holidays. So they have lots of options. There's lots of diabetic friendly, keto and sugar-free options now. And we'll be right back. Alrighty, we're ready. The cookies are going into the oven. 350 degrees for 20 to 22 minutes. Pop them in our silicone pan, and we're ready to roll. Our cookies are ready to come out of the oven. It's been about 20 minutes. They're nice and golden brown at this point. They should be ooey gooey in the center. We'll grab a spatula. I usually like to let them rest just a little bit. Because of almond flour and the way things congeal together, if you just let it sit, they'll be able to come off of your pan just a little bit easier. But we can certainly pull them off now. And we'll open one up in just a second so you can see how good they look inside. Thank you all so much for coming today, and thank you to all of our sponsors. I appreciate them. I hope you are all inspired to do your own keto baking in your kitchen. For the diabetic in your life, for anyone who's just watching their sugar, absolutely, it's totally worth it. Stay tuned for our next episode where it's all things chocolate. Fudgy brownies, here we come. Thanks for joining us on Sweet, Sassy, and Sugar Free. Remember, you can find us at marielanebakery.com. We ship all over the US, and we'll see you again soon.